Our next feature is Susan Cohen. Susan Cohen is the author of 2 chapbooks and 3 full-length collections, most recently Democracy of Fire 2022. A former journalist, she was a contributing writer for the Washington Post magazine and taught at the University of California Grad School of Journalism before earning an MFA from Pacific University. Susan's poems have appeared in 32 Poems, Los Angeles Review, Prairie Schooner, Southern Humanities Review, the Southern Review, and in many anthologies. In 2021, Susan won the Terrain.org Poetry Prize, judged by Arthur Tse, and the Red Wheelbarrow Prize, judged by Mark Doty. She lives in Berkeley. Please welcome Susan Cohen.
Thank you for coming out. I'm going to start with I'm mostly going to read from my new book, Democracy of Fire, but I'm going to start with a newer poem, probably written about a year or so ago in honor of our all being able to gradually start coming together again. It's called On the Outskirts of Hope. This could always be the year that turns out a little better. The way quail vanished from our yard, then reappeared a decade later, as if to prove change as the only constant. Last year, the unneighborly old man who ignored birds but fed black flocks of feral cats kept to his house and forgot to put out his bowl. The cats moved on. Quail came back. That absent bowl, their small reprieve. Silky feathers, silly crests, each plume like a comma to signify a soft pause and a continuum. I'm going to read one poem from my book, A Different Wakeful Animal. This came out in 2016. And there's a few poems in here that are written to parts of my body that aren't quite body parts. So fingerprints, shadow, and this one, which is To My Breath. I held you underwater once, just long enough. I lost you running. A baseball socked you out of me. A car slammed my flat chest to the pavement. You deserve endearments, essence closest to my heart, native offering, slapped into being, bellowed from my lungs, how you do carry my tune. I taste you as the ginger and the clove of me. You are where I meet the universe, coming and going, beloved atoms from all that ever breathed. Mastodon, Cleopatra, poison ivy. You let me make you my familiar, baying dog of mine, buzz of the hot hive in my breast. My sweet parakeet, I let you escape. You keep coming back. So Democracy of Fire, as Sandy mentioned, came out in 2022 in September. I show you the cover because my daughter made this gorgeous piece of art. Wow. And I'll begin with, I imagine myself grateful. And in the end, dirt swaddled, the stringy roots of dandelions, lady smock, lesser celandine getting to know me, no rowboat, no ferryman, no sickening chop to cross. Afterbirth is membrane. What can afterlife be made of? My family will gather. The bowl I emptied sits ready to hold tangerines or car keys. If it's autumn, wind rouses semaphores of color to compensate for the brisk season of dying. I imagine myself grateful, the way a storm inspires thanks when the roof is finally patched, utility bills paid up, the furnace lit. At last, I'll go back into the dark, content never to be cold again, and take everything with me that was ever really mine. So the book has multiple themes. It's not a project with any overriding theme, but I think of it as gradually moving out from the more personal to the broader world and ultimately to the planet. And this is the first poem in the second section, and sadly, it's just as relevant as when I wrote it 4 or 5 years ago. It's called The Drill. I love having a daughter who is grown. We laugh the same staccato laugh. She's walking with me in winter's sun, past plum trees whose early bloom survived a recent shock of hail, the morning not as warm as it looks. She tugs up her collar, the only person I know whose eardrums ache just like mine in wind. Now she's saying she's been told, don't unlock your classroom door, even if a child bangs terrified and begs you to let her in. She teaches her 5th graders to run, hide, defend, the country's common lesson plan, the latest in education for mortality. She's supposed to run with them, not hang back to shepherd slow ones, not hover over any child body to call out a name without a future. If they're locked down, she's been told to grab the red extinguisher, ready to squelch the fire in his eyes. Then the boys can tackle him. Her children practice their assignments, lower blinds, stack chairs and desks and tables to build a barricade. We have calm voices, but the same angry country in our veins. Now she stops to examine a fig tree and leaf, wondering out loud why it bears buds, since the one next to it stands bare as bone. It seems random how only some will get the chance to open. And this one is based on a report that comes out from the United Nations. It's called Report on the State of the World's Children. They took me to sea in a faulty raft. I couldn't swim, but dead I could float. I came from the wrong tribe. They took me at night over mountains and let go of my hand. I was born at the wrong time. They took me to a place of tents and snow. The heat was fire, and they rationed the flames. Winter entered to sleep with us. Also men, harsher in winter. I was brave. Only my dreams cried out. I came from the wrong village. They took me to a camp with tall fences. Cholera could vault. I crossed from a wrong country. Alone, I wandered a desert. I slept under a cactus for weeks until crows found me. They took me to jail. I watched a green fly who was allowed to come and go. They pronounced my wrong name. I prayed the wrong way. They took my house and gave me rubble, then told me to go home. I sat day after day and made walls from all that I had. My 2 arms became mother and father, holding each other and hugging my knees. So scattered through this book is a series of poems. I had a brief incarnation as a science writer back when I was a journalist. And these were all very short prose poems, all taken from Science News and each with a headline that comes from a science news story. Science news, dogs were domesticated once from a lost population of wolves. Old friend, chowing down your easy supper, dream twitching on your doggy bed, better if you had bared your teeth, cornered and devoured us early before we swallowed forests, ripped the flesh off mountains, bloodied earth entire. Better if you'd domesticated us before we turned into this lost population of wolves. Science news, dung beetles navigate by storing star maps in their brains. I ached to teach them how to navigate. I read news to them about the emerging science of emotions. I wrote in a poem, I have no answers for my children, when I should have said, oh, my little beetles, learn to dance on the dung heap and practice your cartography. You might discover you were born knowing how to steer by sun or moon through hazardous geographies. So I don't have a Passover poem, but I do have a Yiddish poem. Corey mentioned Yiddish in one of his poems, and Yiddish, for those of you who may not know, was the language of most European Jews before World War II. And this poem is a cento, which, as a lot of you I'm sure do know, is a poem that's made up of other people's lines. You take other people's lines and you create a new poem from them. But in this case, all the lines are Yiddish sayings, and it's called Yiddish cento. It is always about bread and death. A person can forget everything but eating. Better an egg today than an ox tomorrow. Better one friend with a dish of food than 100 with a sigh. He who has not tasted the bitter does not understand the sweet. All is not butter that comes from a cow. Only in dreams are carrots as big as bears. If you can't endure the bad, you will not live to witness the good. A man should stay alive, if only out of curiosity. He should laugh with the lizards. Laughter is heard farther than weeping. If you are fated to drown, you will drown in a spoonful of water. Man begins in dust and ends in dust. Meanwhile, it's good to drink some vodka. Enjoy life. You can always commit suicide later. If you're going to eat pork, get it all over your beard. Thanks, that last one's my personal favorite. So thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing some of you also read. I'm going to end with the final poem in Democracy of Fire. It's the poem, there's a line in the poem that the title comes from. And this was written a few fire seasons back when PG&E was preemptively trying blackouts for as long as a week at a time in some localities. And shortly after one of those, we were in the little town of Bodega, just inland from Bodega Bay. We were in a dive bar restaurant, which is actually called Cassini's. Some of you may know it, but in this, I call it the Bodega Bar and Grill. And there was a sign offering free food. Fire season with rolling blackouts at the Bodega Bar and Grill. After a week of enforced night, light breaks over the pool table, a clack of cues to crack the silence. All that was perishable is gone into 2 dumpsters out back. New on a whiteboard behind the bar, these offerings: pork belly, salmon, short ribs, butterscotch pudding with or without whipped cream. Also, everything is free for fire survivors, first responders, or anyone who needs it to be. Generosity is a poem tonight, the language of kindness to strangers and gratitude to the volunteers whose red engines screamed from the firehouse next door. No one will argue bumper stickers, wonder who arrived with gun racks or rainbow flags, attack a slogan on someone's sweat-stained cap. Just walking through the warped doorway that never keeps the flies out is a celebration of survival, a free offer, a feast, a toast to the shared citizenship of flesh. Here's to the live and kicking, those with hungers and with thirsts, waitresses, barkeeps, cooks, paying customers or not, praying customers or not, sooty cows and 2 dry hills whose shit sustains the flies. Here's to the frantic flies, to all of us powerless, while flames choose what to burn in this raging democracy of fire.